Disney, Warner Brothers, Paramount, tons of companies in Hollywood right now are facing problems, whether they are laying off their employees, whether they are slashing costs and they are trying to focus on quality over quantity. Most companies right now are struggling in some way, shape, or form, and now we've actually got writers and creatives in the industry coming out and complaining about how hard it is to actually work in Hollywood and why it's a brutal time to be a TV writer. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. Now, over the years, I've had to talk a lot about Hollywood, and not really for positive reasons, because they have not given us as consumers reasons to really support them. A lot of creatives in the industry call us toxic and sexist and bigots for criticizing their work. They say that, oh, we want the industry to be more diverse and inclusive, while also generally hating the people who do not fall into those categories. And now we've got a few different articles releasing talking about how hard it is to be a TV writer right now as woke Hollywood is suffering. It says the 36-year-old began her TV writing career in 2020 as a writer's production assistant and script coordinator for The Legends of Tomorrow before getting hired as a staff writer for ABC's The Company You Keep after the drama that marked Milo's follow-up to This Is Us was canceled following a single season shortly after the Writers Guild of America strike began last May. She had no job to return to when it ended in September, and like scores of other writers of all levels and backgrounds, she doesn't know when or where her next paycheck will come from. Now, obviously, we have heard some horror stories about Hollywood, and it just does not seem like a very consistent industry. And if you are a writer or creative in Hollywood, unless you're, one of the top directors, or one of the top writers, you probably should have a backup plan. But you could say that about so many different industries. And the problem I have with articles like this releasing is that they feel that they are entitled to more, that they have dedicated years of their lives to this industry, and there should not be a case scenario where they don't have a job to fall back on, where they don't have a company who will hire them, when that's really just not the case. We have seen a lot of the creatives who have tried to tear apart the industry be fired from their jobs, be laid off, because they just are not as talented as other people. And while I do not want to relish in the idea of someone losing their job, when you're not good at your job, you're going to get overlooked, you're going to get fired, and someone else is going to take your place. Now, of course, Hollywood is not really hiring better people currently, but of course, that's the hope, right? That they'll turn everything around, that they will go back to creating great content like Disney, for example, even though we know Bob Iger is barreling forward with the, corporate DEI trends, and he doesn't seem to be worried at all about losing any more viewers, even though they are losing viewers en masse. There are people who would love to see Star Wars turned around and Marvel turned around and just Disney in totality turned around. And I also think it's funny they bring up Legends of Tomorrow, right? Because the Arrowverse has been dead for basically years at this point. And while we've gotten some spin-offs, look at the direction they took the Arrowverse, and shows like Batwoman, for example, an extremely woke series. It says people are scared. I'm trying to go back to bartending, she says. A lot of people are wondering what other jobs they can do. I'm close with my new showrunners and they're very supportive of me, but they are looking for jobs. Maybe if there were not people being hired in the industry in DEI positions, this wouldn't have happened, because of course over the past 3 to 4 years we've seen that as a trend, a corporate trend, and there have been a lot of people hired in unnecessary positions like DEI bosses and also people on sets who do all of this consulting. If these positions were never hired and there were not, these floods of useless positions, this probably wouldn't be happening. But I would bet that individuals like this Emily and Milo probably were all for, the industry becoming more diverse and inclusive. And while diversity and inclusivity are not necessarily bad things, forced diversity and forced inclusion are not good things. And that is most certainly what we have seen. I mean, there are a plethora of shows listed off here that went in bad directions, or shows that people generally didn't want to watch. Again, like The Company You Keep. Nobody cares about that. Aquafina is Nora from Queens. Aquafina is one of the most cringeworthy people in the industry at this point. And you also have other people talking about this. This is a article I also wanted to reference from Breitbart. Unemployed Hollywood writers resorting to bartending, DoorDash gigs as studios slash spending. These studios are desperate to try to find a way to make money and to make ultimately a profit. And if you look at the Warner Brothers, you look at the Disneys, they have been slashing costs for a long time at this point, and they have been trying to find a way to get consumers back, get viewers back, and ultimately get rid of these inflated numbers. And it just isn't working for them. But even if they were to, slash all of these unnecessary positions, and they were to only, say, create 3 or 4 shows a year, 1 or 2 movies a year, let's say Disney, for example, that doesn't mean that people are going to come back, because it's not like they're completely, wiping out the ranks that they have built up over the years of the extremely, woke people. That is just not what is going to happen at this point in time, because Bob Iger is so gung-ho on sticking out the course that they are already headed down, thinking that this is the way that they are going to make money. And these companies need to realize it is not. If you look at Disney and you look at, Marvel and Star Wars, Obi-Wan Kenobi was a series people were really excited for. That went terribly. Ahsoka, a series people were excited for. It didn't, receive a lot of hype. We have Acolyte, a show nobody seemingly wants. Then you get into Marvel. You recently had Secret Invasion, which was an absolute behemoth series filled with a star-studded cast. It had an absolute giant budget, over $300 million, and that failed to, meet their expectations. And then you have the live action films that they have been really focusing on, the Little Mermaids, which have been monetary failures. Also the Snow Whites, which they have delayed because they don't know how to get people in theaters to watch them, and that's not going to change anytime soon unless they start listening to consumers. And this is the number one issue with most of the companies. They are not listening to consumers. They are doing what they want. And while yes, creatives and the studio execs need to feel confident in the product they're putting out, they also are still not making the product for themselves, and they are making it for an audience who is no longer showing up, and an audience who is no longer taking their bullshit and no longer blindly trusting them. And it is going to take years to rebuild back to a point where people feel confident, and by purchasing tickets or swiping their credit cards for subscription services. And a lot of the subscription platforms, a lot of the, streaming services that they have are also still not profitable. So right now, it is not a good time to be a TV writer in Hollywood. It is not a good time for Hollywood in general. And is there a way to save Hollywood? At this point, who really knows? There are a lot of companies, obviously, and a lot of companies who aren't seemingly listening to what our feedback is. So only time will tell. It will be interesting, but hilarious. Enough, all of these people who have attacked us for years are now coming out and complaining about how their jobs are going away and how hard of a time it is for them, and they expect us to defend them when there is no way that is going to happen. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.